Hello, and welcome back to the Wise Guys podcast. Just kidding, this is the first one. I am your host, William.
Hello, I'm Nicholas, joined here by the lovely William.
So today we're here to talk about ADHD.
William is debilitated. He can barely even tie his shoes.
He's right, I wear flip-flops and Crocs.
Wise man. Tell us about that. What do you think about your ADHD?
ADHD is the way they've sort of labeled it. Characteristic traits are you can't stay on task, you can't, that's really the main thing. Like you jump from thought to thought.
But I also believe in self-fulfilling prophecies. So perhaps your belief that you have ADHD manifests itself as distraction.
So that's a great philosophy, but it doesn't work practically. The strategies that I've employed, because I can't stay on task, I was just gifted. I made it through high school, really no problem. And then when I was in college, it got more challenging. When I first started, my first semester's GPA was a 1.6.
My Lord.
And then my second semester's GPA was 1.96.
I think that's a good improvement.
Yep, came up. But the last year of school, I made Dean's List. So we figured it out. But it was very difficult to stay on task. I hated doing work before it was due. I did all my work right before.
Chronic procrastination.
Yeah. And then it manifests in social relationships. So, social relationships.
Speaking of relationships, I think we forgot the bruise.
We did that. We did entertain our lovely audience.
All right. So now that he's gone and I've got you captive, what do you guys think about Atlantis? What do you guys think about the pyramids of Giza? What do you think about Angkor Wat? What do you think about psychic powers, UFOs, dragons?
Oh, geez. For a little bit of context, me, William, am a Christian, and Nick is seeking. He doesn't know what he believes, and that's perfectly fine.
I know one thing I believe in.
What's that?
Zeus, baby.
And we're going to talk a lot about that.
So this is what I believe. A high supreme God that is essentially electricity. And I also believe that the entire universe is essentially can be described in terms of electricity. And the electrons running through his veins and his blood and neurotransmitters creating synapses.
Yes, but your definition of Zeus is not what most people think of Zeus.
Let's see what the definition of Zeus is. Exactly. My definition of Zeus is not what most people think it is. Let's talk about radios for a second. So essentially...
Bro, you're arguing that I am not ADD. You are ADHD. Technically, ADD is out of usage.
Do you see how the terminology has changed throughout the years? Before, they might have just called you an intelligent man. But now there's something wrong with you because you can't stay on task when there's an infinite amount of information at your fingertips. Or near infinite. So in relative to a human lifespan, the amount of information we have access to is infinite. That is an example of what I think is really going on with ADD is it's a refusal to let things go, you know? So like you're just like a guy juggling a bunch of balls and he's throwing them all in the air and some of them are like helium filled and they float away. But like they eventually come back to him, let's say. But really, it's like, why are you juggling so many balls, you know?
So I would agree with that on a partial level. Like it's not an inability or a refusal to let go of things. It is an inability to hold on to things.
But, okay, so imagine you have a hand full of gravel, right? And I throw you a ball. I don't get mad at you if you can't catch it, or if you drop the gravel, because it's impossible to catch the ball with your hands full of gravel. And it's impossible to hold on to the gravel while also catching the ball. They're mutually exclusive activities.
I think I understand what you're saying. Like the gravel in your hand are the smaller tasks that you yourself have imposed, and the ball is like an external factor, like a test.
You could think of it in terms of a test. I think I would think of it in terms of more as like the unexpected. But if you're over encumbered because your hands are full of gravel, you won't be able to answer the door.
I'll be around my house. I'll be doing laundry. I'll be brushing my teeth. I'm making my bed. I'm, stuff, folding laundry.
A lot of laundry.
A
lot of laundry tasks.
But like you got some in the washer, you got some in the dryer, you got some on your bed that need to be folded, but you're playing VR and you got to clear this room and your friends are yelling at you because they're dying. Then there's a knock at the door. All of your attention is now on the door. All those tasks have been dropped, and you will go back to the washer and dryer and forget that they are both full.
And that makes perfect sense. If, let's say you're on the Titanic, right? And it begins to sink. You hit the iceberg. Are you going to be concerned with your checkers game at that point? Are you going to remember where the pieces are in the chess game? Like, oh, but I was in checkmate. The ship is sinking. It's hierarchy, essentially. I think perhaps it's that the hierarchy is incorrect. You're valuing gravel over catching the ball. You're valuing these ephemeral, or like laundry, right? You're valuing laundry rather than fun with friends. And I'm not saying that I have a correct hierarchy, but I'm saying it falls between the cracks because it's small stuff.
So the reason I said test is the ball earlier is because you can't look into the future. Everything is right now. Like, you can't suffer, quote unquote, studying because you want to do well on the test, which is a week from now.
What do you mean suffer studying?
Because studying sucks. I would rather,
I disagree. I think he belches in protest.
So the reason I say you do poorly with delayed gratification, studying for the test, which is not immediately pleasurable, that contributes to your long-term success, is not something you can you don't care. You don't want to do it. You're all about pleasure right now.
I am? Or?
No, not you. But like ADHD, like this is stereotypical.
What would you call them using the English language? Not an acronym.
Say distractible.
Easily distracted. What's a one word for that? Dazed?
No, I wouldn't say dazed because you're in your right mind.
Okay. It's just
distractible. Short-sighted.
Okay.
Like extremely short-sighted.
But take the context of a forest or a jungle or the ocean, a highly chaotic environment. Take that context and place the ADHD mind in that scenario.
Perfect,
right? So is it you have a attention hyperactivity deficit disorder, whatever it stands for, or is it that the society has grown up quickly and it doesn't suit human brains?
No, I'm with you on that. There's a particular guy that I listen to on this subject.
His name is Dr. Russell A. Barkley, and he has some really good videos on ADHD and how it's been misnamed, how it has been misunderstood, and how there's been wrong treatment, and the implications that it has for young brains.
The delayed gratification it's like to the detriment of relationships, tasks, career. So you read Isaiah. Tell me about that.
I read Isaiah. It seems like a bunch of prophecies to scare the enemies. And then a very clear description of the nature of God in the eyes of the Jews.
Okay.
Which is that he's a singular being.
Okay.
And I think that my Zeus theory could fall in line with that.
Zeus is the god of the sky in ancient Greek mythology as the chief Greek deity. Zeus is considered the ruler, protector, and father of all gods and humans. Zeus is often depicted as an older man with a beard and is represented by symbols such as the lightning bolt and the eagle.
No, I think he's a real god. So I think what you need to pay attention to right there is Zeus is often depicted. Often and depicted.
What do you do with the first commandment that says you shall have no graven image? Or maybe this is second. Yeah, this is second commandment.
Those were given to Moses on Mount Sinai after he destroyed the first copy, correct?
Yeah, he destroyed the first copy because Israel was worshiping a false god, and he was like,
Out of anger.
oh, out of just indignance, or what was the word? Righteous indignation.
He was correct.
Yes.
I'm not even sure. I haven't finished the Bible. But a big question I have is, do the 10 Commandments still apply post-Jesus, post-Muhammad, post...
100%.
Okay, you say that.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into that. Let's read these first.
1. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Out of the house of slavery you shall have no other gods before me. 2. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above or that is on the earth beneath. Make for yourself an idol that's like it's understood that there was a small figurine. 3, you shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not acquit anyone who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother so that your days may be long on the earth. That's an interesting, you are promised long days if you honor your parents. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet your neighbor's house or any of his other things, such as his wife or his property.
Okay. And these seem like good rules, especially for a violent, warring tribe in the wilderness, living out of tents, carrying all their livestock with them. It seems to me to be a sort of ground rules to keep the Jews in check to get them to the promised land. That's my current working hypothesis on what these are.
Keep them in check.
Yeah. Then they have to go to judges, right? They make the idol when he's coming down with rules that say don't make an idol of anything. It says on the earth or in the heavens above. And an idol is something that you worship, right? But is it wrong to make a statue not for worship? I don't worship a statue of Zeus. I'm saying Zeus is making the computer work and the microphone work and keeping the beer cold and allowing me to think.
So I'm going to disagree, but there's no problem with a statue. When the people before Noah were building the Tower of Babel, they used the brick. God had nothing to say about the brick. The brick was fine, but he cared about what they were using it for. So I can have a statue, but when I start to worship it, that's the problem.
The Tower of Babel, it said that we have to knock down the tower or they will become like us and nothing will be withheld from them.
So this is Genesis 11, starting in 1. Now, the whole world had one language and common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used bricks instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord God came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so that they will not understand one another." So when he says in verse 6, the Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan will be impossible." God is saying they are building a tower to the sky. They are lifting themselves up to God. The heavens is universally understood as where God or the gods are.
And the Lord said, "There is now one people, and they all have one language. This is what they have begun to do. And now all that they plan to do will be possible for them. Come, let's go down and mix up their language so they won't understand each other's language."
So what's your first thought?
Why, bro? What the Come, let us make bricks and bake them hard. They use bricks for stones and asphalt for mortar. Let's build a city and a tower with its top in the sky, and let's make a name for ourselves. So maybe the issue was the materials. You shouldn't be using bricks. Should be using stones.
No. So God doesn't care about technology.
Why does he tear down, or why does he frustrate their endeavors then?
Because It is not what they are doing. It is why.
They're doing it to make a name for themselves.
Exactly.
Okay. And what's wrong with that?
They're trying to make a name for themselves, but they are all in the same place. Why? Why? Who are you making a name for yourself for? You all speak the same language.
I guess they're descendants. Or I guess they want to be famous. Celebrities? Is that essentially their goal? They want to be famous tower builders, like Trump Towers, right?
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, what the not really why. It's more just, that's that, yeah, what the hell, man? They were going to build a cool tower. They had a cool guard. You kicked him out. They built a cool tower. You knocked it down.
He didn't knock down the tower. They abandoned it.
Oh, they
Yeah, he didn't knock down the tower. He just confused their language. And then we're like, hey, let's group together in groups of people who understand each other. And then they dispersed.
So I guess I don't know. I don't really have a problem with it. It's just, I don't know. And I don't consider that ADHD.
We've come full circle. I mean, I wouldn't consider it ADHD either.
Okay, so
Consider, when you say it, what do you mean?
I guess what I'm saying is I don't think you have your condition that you believe you have.
Dude, I freaking know I have it.
Okay, you know you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Does God know you have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
He knows all. He's omniscient.
Okay. How do you know he knows?
Because he's omniscient.
How do you know you have it?
So I observed my behavior in the past, man.
Describe the patterns that would happen in your life that made you believe I have ADHD.
So there are several symptoms, if you could call it. So I think ADHD is a misnomer because it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I think that that's not correct. And the guy that I was going to recommend is who I got this from. And effectively, it is a cognitive thing. To be crude, there are two halves of your brain. The back half is knowing stuff, and the front half is doing stuff. And you can have all this stuff.
Do you have that correct? I believe frontal cortex is higher thinking, isn't it?
That's executive function.
And then
So that's why I say crudely.
yes, but I'm saying the lower instinctual reptile brain is contained in the brainstem, and the
Because that's not really my point.
okay.
I am dancing around.
What is your point?
So I'm getting there.
All right.
The knowledge on how to do stuff or why to do stuff is there. But the motivation or the ability to do is not.
Okay. So can you put that in layman's terms?
I believe that you're looking at the microcosm here and not the macro application. Seeking a mate or hunting for food in the primal sense, or hunting in the primal sense, or in today's application, work. And I had a problem with that. I had a great job. I was working at Gulfstream and I was doing work. The work encompassed just a lot of clicking on a screen. There was a document that would be generated whenever there was a problem on the aircraft. And my job was to look at the document and write instructions based on our regulations. It's just a lot. Like, I felt it was very, very clunky.
Is a tedious, non-intuitive process.
And I couldn't do it. Like, I tried my darndest to perform in a way that my boss was satisfied, and I couldn't do it.
Okay, and does that mean that you have a disorder, or does that mean that your boss and the FFA is facilitating essentially this? They want this standard that can't be followed by human beings under normal, happy circumstances.
So I would disagree with that on two counts. So the first is a lot of other people were able to do it.
Okay, who? What types of people?
My coworkers.
But what were they like?
This comes to the second point. I have a pattern of this. So I was at Gulfstream for 6 months. Before that, I worked for U-Haul for 3 months. Before that, I was McDonald's. Before that, I was helping my father while he was dying, which is a little different. But before that, I was at seminary for like 2 months, and then I quit. So I'm really going backwards in time. I'll start in 2020 and kind of move forward. December of 2019, I graduated college. January 2020, I started a job at a pulp mill. March, COVID, duh. 6 months after January, I quit the pulp mill. 8 months unemployed. Do construction for like 2 months. Get an actual engineering job again. Do that for like 2 months. Quit. Go to seminary for like 2 months. Quit.
Why'd you? Oh, do derail? And why did you quit seminary?
I couldn't hack it, bro.
Okay, you told me that, but like, why?
Greek?
You couldn't learn Greek.
Dude, I couldn't learn Greek. So I went to Georgia Southern for mechanical engineering for like 5.5 years and finally got out. Greek was harder than any class I took in engineering, dude. It was, and I couldn't do it. Yeah. Dude, anyway, I'm getting flashbacks.
Flashbacks to Greek.
So seminary, quit. Now we're into January of 22. And I flop back between like taking care of my dad, working at McDonald's, taking care of my dad. My dad passed. I go work for U-Haul, and then I go get an interview in August of 22, get a job at Gulfstream, start in October, and then flash forward to 2 weeks ago, I quit.
Yeah.
So there's a larger pattern here at play.
There could be.
Oh, there is.
Okay. What makes you so sure?
Dude, there's 3 years of my life where I didn't stay in one place for longer than 6 months.
Or maybe all the places suck.
I think there's a common denominator here, and it's not the places.
It is. Are they all in Georgia?
No.
Okay.
Seminary was in Kentucky. Construction was in Florida. McDonald's was in Florida. Everything else was in Georgia.
Okay. But it's all the Southeast, right?
Yeah, but so the only reason that I stuck with Georgia Southern in my engineering classes, that was the most difficult period of time in my whole life. The only reason I stuck with it was because I was so invested. I looked at seminary and I was like, dude, this is another 5 years. I am out. There's no way. I quit the pulp mill because I talked to too many people that said, if you had told me 5 years ago that I'd still be here, I would have believed you. And it's just like, I do not want to. So then I had rational reasons, but there's not just ADHD at play here. I mean, I've got bipolar 1, which you have strong mood swings, and I'm taking medication that's definitely stabilized my mood. But there's also some childhood trauma in there. And mom, dad, love you. And that's another thing we can talk about later.
We can. Maybe on another episode.
Yeah, of course. But I ended up having to grow up too fast.
You had younger brothers.
Yeah, I had younger brothers. Dad wasn't there a whole lot. Mom kind of had to shoulder everything herself, and that kind of led to some
You had to be the man of the house.
problems. Yeah. Oh, man. I saw the way my mom and dad interacted, and I was like, absolutely freaking not. I want nothing to do with that kind of thing. But that's not to say they were bad parents.
No, not at all. But I'm saying, so I believe in polarity. Positive role model. I want to be like that. Negative role model. I don't want to be like that.
But we will scar our children in our own way when we have them.
We absolutely might. Might.
There is no doubt about it.
I have doubts.
Dude, you think you're going to be a great parent the entire time?
No, I don't. I have doubts.
Okay, you're still going to scar them.
No, I have doubts.
About?
Everything. I have my doubts. My uncertainty is all I have.
It's the only certain thing you have.
The only certain thing is my uncertainty.
Anyway, fear of commitment, I feel like that's pretty standard in American males today.
I'm not afraid of commitment. I think that is a perception that you hold, but is that your true belief?
No, I certainly admit that it's my experience.
That's your perspective.
Correct.
I think Marcus Aurelius, I saw this on Twitter, maybe it wasn't really him.
Marcus Aurelius is way dead.
There is no truth. There is only opinion. There is no fact. There is only perspective.
I don't know about that.
I kind of agree, I must say.
Well, like, how final is death?
I don't know.
Death is very final.
You
are no longer here.
Have you ever died?
Your body remains, but your self is gone.
Have you ever died?
No, but I've seen dead people.
Does that mean you will die?
Yes.
How do you know?
Everyone who has ever lived has died.
I think in Isaiah, it was talking about that in the New Jerusalem, their lifespans will be as trees.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? And he makes Adam and Eve, and everything's great. They're hanging out in the garden, no clothes on. The names of the animals have all been given. And God's like, hey, there's this tree, right? Don't eat from that.
Or else.
Pretty much. He said you'll die. And then the serpent comes and he's like, hey, did God really say that? So they screw up. They eat the fruit. God told them not to, and they did. Adam and Eve already knew what was good and evil. Before they ate the fruit, the good was to obey. The bad was to eat the fruit. So what does it mean that they have knowledge of good and evil?
They can distinguish for themselves what is right and what is wrong.
Wow. So, Adam and Eve eat the fruit, right? And now we are thrown into a quandary. God and creation, because those are two separate things. Creation is this physical world that we live in, and God is a spirit.
Yes.
This creation, this physical place, was supposed to be in perfect unity with God, and it was, until humanity, his co-reignees, like we were reigning with God in the garden. It wasn't equality, it was communion, fellowship.
Communion, fellowship. So a tripod.
I wouldn't describe it that way.
God, Adam, and Eve.
Kinda.
Okay, what do you mean kind?
So, yes, God is God of the universe, and we are finite beings, and our power is not infinite, our knowledge is not infinite, our presence is also not infinite, and his is for all those three. But in Christ Jesus, this sin that separates us from God within ourselves is absolved. We no longer owe a debt to God. Though we may still live with the consequences of our sin on this earth, we are now absolved when it comes to God, and he can come live within us, and we can commune with him, though not perfectly because we can't physically see him, but he lives within us. Now, to your hierarchy question specifically, God is God of the universe, but yet, when we accept Christ Jesus into our lives and make him Lord and we obey his commandments, we become his children.
Jesus's or God's?
Both. Same thing.
It's not to me.
Jesus is God.
Doesn't sound the same.
Jesus is the Son of God. And we become sons of God, even females. Now, that's actually an interesting point. So females, when they become Christians, become sons of God. And what that means is, from our Western ears, that sounds weird.
It does.
But what is implied there is, in an Eastern context,
they could inherit property.
That's right. Males had rights that females did not.
Yeah, and I'm all about equality for women and men, but there is this fundamental difference.
Of course. There's this giant question of, how is God going to restore, or is he? We don't know. God is completely powerful and can do whatever he wants. Is he going to restore creation? Basically, God says, I'm going to put enmity between the woman and the serpent. I mean, he gives a bunch of curses, like, by the sweat of your brow, you will eat bread. And bread is like this metaphor, not for physical bread, but like food, like the things you prepare. So God lays a bunch of curses on them just so you can kind of you got to learn from what you did,
yes.
right? Because if there's no consequences, you're not going to learn.
Yeah.
But he also gives a promise that the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. That is the promised Messiah. Now, Jewish people who don't believe in Jesus still believe that there's a Messiah coming, but they just don't believe it was Jesus.
Why not?
That's a whole nother topic. We can do that within another episode, but
I think it's very fitting for an ADHD episode. How fast can you spin this roulette of intention?
what? I also don't know the answer to why Jews don't believe in Jesus very well, so I have to do my homework.
Okay. Well, let's shoot from the hip. What do you think?
I can't do that.
Why not?
I can't speak without knowledge.
Okay, so that's your limitation. I can speak perfectly well without knowledge, and I have no problems doing so.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
What is your star sign?
My what?
Star sign.
I don't know what that means.
Astrological zodiac.
No, we're not going that way.
When is your birthday?
It's Goober. No, I don't believe that.
You don't have to believe it.
Okay, so there's this giant question of, how is God going to restore? Because he answered the question of, is he, with the promise of the Messiah. God promises a Messiah. But we don't really know very much about God up to this point, or at least humanity doesn't. So the next big download is Abraham, and God makes a covenant with Abraham, and he says, I'm going to make you a nation. Well, Abraham becomes a nation, and we're skipping a whole lot of history right there. And then when Moses brings him out of Egypt, he marries that nation.
What do you mean by when Moses comes out of Egypt, he marries the nation?
No. Moses does not. God does.
God marries Israel.
Yes.
Yes. He said he'll establish them forever.
Yeah. So he makes a covenant with them. He says, I will be your God and you will be my people. And you must obey these commands. And they end up not doing it on many, many, many occasions. And he sends plagues and stuff. God gives a giant download. He said, this is how I want you to worship me. He gives you temple laws, like the sacrifice ordinances. And so we get a giant download of who God is, what he cares about, how to worship him, etc. Get to see that he's holy. Now, this term holy is critically important to your understanding of God.
It is. It's tough to really deeply understand what holy means.
Right. Now, this holiness is, the basis of this holiness is he is separate or different or distinct from anything else that we know.
That's the definition I'm familiar with as well. Separate.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. The reason that is because of sin. Sin is what separates us from God. When we believe in Christ Jesus, our heart of stone is turned into a heart of flesh, which what that means is we are no longer dead in our trespasses and sins, but we are alive in Christ Jesus our Lord. And that is only because of his grace, like his mercy. Because he's a just God. Like, he demands consequences for sin. The consequence for our sin was the sacrifice of his son. So what you get when Moses came and gave the law, it's like, we're going to sacrifice an ox for this offense. We're going to sacrifice a dove for this offense, etc., so that the Jewish people understand that there is a cost.
And it can be delineated in terms of animals.
Yes. So
because an animal like a dove, it's not much meat. But an animal like an ox,
it's also not as valuable as an ox because of what it can do, what it costs you. Because an ox can plow a field, a pigeon can't.
I know an ox can also feed your entire family for a month, or maybe longer.
Right.
But a dove is just like lunch.
But there's also praise offerings or a free will offering. You just want to do it. You totally can. So we get a giant download in Exodus. We get more downloads from the prophets, but ultimately, and I might be skipping a couple of covenants here, and there's a ton of covenants because God cares for his people. Ultimately, God cares for his people. And at this particular point in history, the Jews are God's people. Now, there are tons of laws considering the conversion of people to Judaism. If you wanted to be a Jew, you totally could be. And you would be fully inaugurated as a citizen and as a brother of the Jewish people.
Really?
Yes.
How?
I'd have to look stuff up.
Okay. So you don't know off the top, but it's possible for a Gentile to become a Jew.
Yeah. Plenty of Egyptians left with the Israelites.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is still this aching question. We have this temple system, we have this sacrificial system, but in Hebrews and Romans, it talks about how there is this constant need for a sacrifice. There is no end. The high priest who goes into the Holy of Holies to present a sacrifice to the Lord, he will die and one will take his place. That one will die and will take his place, etc., etc. So where's the end? The Passover lamb was supposed to be, and the Passover is like the highest of Jewish traditions because it was the celebrated thing of the Jews coming out of Egypt. And this Passover lamb needed to be spotless, and it lived with the family for a little while. Like, it was in the house. And Jesus is the Passover lamb. He was the final sacrifice for all sin for all time.
Second half, welcome back from the break. We stretched our legs a bit.
Yep.
Got some fuel for the second half.
Nicholas, you had a line of thought you wanted to explore.
More a personal account.
Well, go for it.
So, I guess I'll just start with my background, which is I was raised in the First United Methodist Church. So, deeply believed in God, prayed lots every night almost. And then high school, puberty, learning more about evolution, biology, physics, The Big Bang Theory came out on television. All these things led me to kind of rejecting any sort of spiritual account or worldview. So,
I had a similar falling out.
and I think that's probably pretty normal. But I'm curious about you now. What brought you back?
Power.
Excuse me?
Power.
What do you mean?
So, a little bit of background.
Electrical power?
Spiritual power.
Spiritual power.
Far more powerful. I lived a life of sin that left me without anything it had promised. Social acceptance, emotional maturity, money, girlfriend, etc. I called out to God and he answered.
How did he answer?
For me, at that time, and there are other things that he's done to express his power, but in this particular instance, it was an uplifting of my spirit. I mean, I was completely crushed.
Okay. But so what age was this? Did this just happen, or
22, 23.
just it was you woke up one morning and it happened, or did you call out, you said a prayer of repentance? What happened?
So this was 2016, maybe 2015. And there was this girl that I was dating at the time. She was exactly what the world told me was part of an attractive woman. Very pretty. She was in my room. I went into the bathroom and I wept. But I had to weep silently because I didn't want her to hear me.
You were concealing yourself from her.
Yes.
Why?
Because what's that? So she exerted a lot of effort to be there.
Yeah.
And if I told her that I didn't want her there, that's fucked up.
So you felt guilty about
No. I didn't feel guilty about her coming. I was busted. Like, it wasn't me feeling guilty about anything. It was truly a loss of identity. Our relationship was a reflection of the patterns of behavior that I had been engaging in up to that point. The only difference on this particular one was I had nothing left. Let's say you're playing football and you're running and you're getting a hit. As you continue in the game, you're fatigued. And eventually you run out. Then coach calls you in. But in this particular instance, there was no coach to call me out. I was exhausted. And there was no way that I could refill this myself. I can't describe it as anything other than I had nothing left.
you were just exhausted. You were spent.
I would say bankrupt.
Bankrupt.
Like I owed.
You owed. Well, you're bankrupt. You're free. You don't owe nothing.
I was in debt. No. I'm in debt to God.
You're in debt to God.
Yes.
Why?
Because without the forgiveness of Christ, you are in debt to God.
For what?
Your sin. You're on the hook.
For I don't know where I've sinned, I guess.
Have you had sex outside of marriage?
I considered my ex-girlfriend to be my wife.
You have to make a covenant in the presence of other people so that they know about it and they can hold you accountable.
We made it between us and God.
You got to make it between other people as well.
I didn't realize that was a stipulation.
So have you ever lied?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever stolen?
Definitely. What are those sins?
Yeah.
Why?
10 Commandments.
You're not supposed to steal?
Yeah.
Why not?
Because it's not yours.
Whose is it?
It's theirs.
I know, but it's finders keepers. You know what I'm saying?
Not quite.
I've never broken into a house and broken to the vault and stolen the rubies, if that's what you're saying.
You don't have to. Stealing a pencil is enough. Remember, God is holy. He is completely other than us. Any sin is apart from him.
I see. My worldview is that you should just do whatever you feel.
I think we've talked about this privately, but if I just feel I should go kill a bunch of people.
You should.
Why?
That's who God made you to be.
Negative.
I believe that if that's genuinely how you feel, you should just do it.
What about the consequences?
Let God sort them out.
But no, I'm talking about for you.
Oh, well, I mean, he'll deal with it.
He's going to deal with it by using man-made constructs such as the law and the government to send me to prison so I don't do it again.
Yes. I mean, but you still could.
No, I'll be in prison.
You can break out.
That's really hard.
Yeah. I'm not saying it'll be easy. if it's meant to be. I believe if you're meant to go kill a bunch of people, you should do it. You might be a tool like the Assyrians, the Babylonians.
There was terrible judgment enacted upon the Assyrians and Babylonians.
Yeah, and there will be terrible judgment enacted upon the mass shooters of children, of religious minorities, of all kinds of people.
There is no moral mandate for there to be a villain.
No, there is, by definition.
That in mind, why would I do it? Why would God make me with the proclivity and the approval to kill a bunch of people if he's going to judge me? That is in contradiction.
You know where we at. It's prime time rapping. Let's go ahead and get into it. You see what goes down. We're done here. It's a wrap.
I believe in experimentation. I was introduced to weed by my elder brother in high school, and I smoked weed infrequently. I found it very amazing. It was terrifying at first.
Why was it terrifying?
The first time I smoked, I just was super high. My heart was beating like a rabbit. Terrified. I'd got sand or dirt on my legs. I thought I was covered in ants biting me. I was just paranoid, having panic attacks, thought I was dying. Just super scared. I smoked a lot of weed for a long time. Every day for 3 years. Multiple times a day. Constantly high because I loved it.
A little bit of background. I smoked a ton of pot too.
I had nothing wrong with it. It'll be legal soon.
Keep going.
You disagree?
Yes.
Why do you disagree?
So, if I have a headache, I'll take some ibuprofen. If I'm dying, take some morphine. THC, I would liken to morphine.
I would not. I would liken it to smokable dopamine. You liken it to morphine, but that's just totally wrong. We have an opioid system in our body.
Yes, we also have an endocannabinoid system.
Yes, and they're totally separate.
Yes.
They're separate.
But you can't liken a cannabinoid to a dopaminergic.
You can't liken an opioid to a cannabinoid.
Same reason you can't liken opioid to cannabinoid.
We are fools, for clarification. I am a fool. Headley is a fool.
Disagree.
You don't believe you're a fool?
I don't think I'm a fool, no. Wisdom of God, baby.
I won't break out the Bible on you, but you should not consider yourself wise.
No. Fear of God is the basis of understanding.
Okay, but there's also those who consider themselves wise are not good.
No, I just fear God. That's my wisdom.
So, smoking marijuana sent me down this sort of quest for entheogens.
What is that?
Drugs used for religious purposes, such as DMT in the Amazon.
Hallucinogens.
No, entheogens.
Hallucinogens.
Right? Theocracy, theology. Entheogens.
Just primarily hallucinogens?
I don't know. Are they? So, like, nicotine, it was used by Native Americans as an entheogen.
Okay.
And I feel like a lot of that was due to a preoccupation with the public education system on mental ability rather than physical capability. Like, they had PE class and the president's exam, but not like a strict sort of, oh, if you're weak, it's okay as long as you pass your math test. But it's really not, because like if your body isn't working properly, you're not
You're not going to be around very long.
You're not going to be around very long. You're also not thinking correctly. You're thinking in like this self-destructive way. I wasn't physically active. I was neglecting my body. I was soft.
Just for reference, he's a freaking unit now.
Oh, I am?
Yeah, dude. You got like freaking tree trunks for arms and legs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I must be, oh, that's so sweet.
You're welcome, my guy.
So as soon as I turned 18, I bought a pack of cigarettes because I sort of had this notion that if I began smoking and was able to quit, I could help other people quit smoking.
It's an interesting perspective.
The addictive qualities of tobacco are unlike anything I can even describe. Have you ever been addicted to nicotine, Headley?
You know, I dipped for a little while, but then I started being able to suck air through my bottom row of teeth, so I quit.
Smart guy.
There were several things that God stripped from me. Firstly, pornography. Secondly, marijuana. Thirdly, nicotine. Fourthly, alcohol. So on down the line.
So you don't look at any porn anymore?
I have not looked at pornography since 2018.
Wow. So I took LSD and had these sort of revelatory experiences that I can only compare to that of John of Patmos. I saw it was the whole earth, nuclear fire. It was a desert, and it was like the image of like a stone, like a skull being like eroded into dust through like wind. You know what I'm saying? Like it like started at the top and like the whole thing turned to dust.
Did you have an interpretation for that?
That nuclear war was imminent.
Was it?
It could have been.
Is it?
And I kind of believe that maybe by me believing in it, disaster was averted. You're welcome, everyone.
I don't know about all that.
You don't know about all that.
So John on Patmos and all the other prophets, because I would consider them one and the same, at least from a revelatory perspective. They were given direct revelation from God, and John tries his best to explain what it is he's seeing. He likens the things that he's seeing to things that he knows.
They gave me a scroll, and I put it in my mouth, and it tasted as honey, but it was bitter in the belly. What does that sound like?
That is exactly what the gospel is. So when you first accept it, it's delicious because you're like, oh my gosh, my sins are forgiven. I'm no longer enemy of God. But now there is this bitterness where you see the wisdom of how fallen the world is. You know, more wisdom brings sorrow. With the whole nuclear war thing. You know, there's the whole Ukraine jazz going on, and people are like, oh, Putin's going to nuke us, and we're all going to blah, blah, blah. This is not the first time we've had a nuclear crisis. It's not the last time we're going to do it either.
Think it might be.
No.
Why do you disagree?
Because A, the world will never give up its nuclear weapons, and B, God will not allow it. If we were going to blow ourselves up in a nuclear holocaust, we would have done it already. There is but the hand of God keeping us from doing that right now.
I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, but God approved that. And that's all the time we have. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the Wise Guy Podcast. I've been your host, William. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining us.
And this is William signing off.